The Bourne Identity by Robert Ludlum. The man had been dragged from the sea, more corpse than man. He opened his eyes in the filthy room on the small island of Port Noir, in the northern Mediterranean. The bullet wounds about his head had been cleansed white by the violent waters. There was one other man in the room. He had waited for the moment when his extraordinary patient would come out of coma. And the stranger was extraordinary. The words he had screamed, the languages he had spoken. He had the body of an athlete, a mind of immense intelligence. "Who's in this room?" asked the patient. "I'm a doctor," said the emaciated man. "Your doctor. What's your name?" "What?" "I asked you what your name was." The stranger stared helplessly at the walls. "I don't know." Oh, my God. So begins the harrowing story of a man with no memory. He is given a name, Jason Bourne. He is a man unknown men recognize and lash out in fear and fury to kill. In Zurich, a woman comes into his life, first as a hostage, then as an ally, finally as the only person on earth who believes in him. You cannot be what you are not. Her credo, an act of faith, sustains him. In Paris, his origins are given substance. Jason Bourne sprang out of Southeast Asia, and words from that past hit him like lightning. Delta, Cain, Medusa, Treadstone, Carlos. He is an international assassin hunted by unseen armies. You cannot be what you are not. Or can he? Is he? The final journey takes Jason Bourne to a quiet, tree-lined street in Manhattan. In an eruption of violence, an elegant brownstone residence becomes a jungle where he had been executed long ago. In this, his deepest and finest novel, Robert Ludlum has created a man in conflict with forces beyond his understanding, a man in a terrible labyrinth all of us who have ever said, "I can't remember," will recognize. And a woman whose commitments to truth, to instinct, born of understanding as well as love, raise her above fiction, for she too is everywhere. Dedication. For Glynis, a very special light we all adore, with our love and deep respect. Preface. The New York Times, Friday, July 11th, 1975, front page. Diplomats said to be linked with fugitive terrorist known as Carlos. Paris, July 10th. France expelled 3 high-ranking Cuban diplomats today in connection with the worldwide search for a man called Carlos, who is believed to be an important link in an international terrorist network. The suspect, whose real name is thought to be Ilich Ramirez Sanchez, is being sought in the killing of 2 French counterintelligence agents and a Lebanese informer at a Latin Quarter apartment on June 27th. The 3 killings have led the police here and in Britain to what they feel is the trail of a major network of international terrorist agents. In the search for Carlos after the killings, French and British policemen discovered large arms caches that linked Carlos to major terrorism in West Germany, and led them to suspect a connection between many terrorist acts throughout Europe. Reported seen in London. Since then, Carlos has been reported seen in London and in Beirut, Lebanon. Associated Press, Monday, July 7th, 1975. Syndicated Dispatch. A dragnet for assassin. London, AP. Guns and girls, grenades and good suits, a fat billfold, airline tickets to romantic places, and nice apartments in a half-dozen world capitals. This is the portrait emerging of a jet-age assassin being sought in an international manhunt. The hunt began when the man answered his doorbell in Paris and shot dead 2 French intelligence agents and a Lebanese informer. It has put 4 women into custody in 2 capitals, accused of offenses in his wake. The assassin himself has vanished, perhaps in Lebanon, the French police believe. In the past few days in London, those acquainted with him have described him to reporters as good-looking, courteous, well-educated, wealthy, and fashionably dressed. But his associates are men and women who have been called the most dangerous in the world. He is said to be linked with the Japanese Red Army, the Organization for the Armed Arab Struggle, the West German Baader-Meinhof Gang, the Quebec Liberation Front, the Turkish Popular Liberation Front, separatists in France and Spain, and the provisional wing of the Irish Republican Army. When the assassin traveled to Paris, to The Hague, to West Berlin, bombs went off, guns cracked, and there were kidnappings. A breakthrough occurred in Paris when a Lebanese terrorist broke under questioning and led 2 intelligence men to the assassin's door in Paris on June 27th. He shot all 3 to death and escaped. Police found his guns and notebooks containing death lists of prominent people. Yesterday, the London Observer said police were hunting for the son of a Venezuelan communist lawyer for questioning in the triple slaying. Scotland Yard said, "We are not denying the report," but added there was no charge against him and he was wanted only for questioning. The Observer identified the hunted man as Ilich Ramirez Sanchez of Caracas. It said his name was on one of the 4 passports found by French police when they raided the Paris apartment where the slayings took place. The newspaper said Ilyich was named after Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, founder of the Soviet state, and was educated in Moscow and speaks fluent Russian. In Caracas, a spokesman for the Venezuelan Communist Party said Ilyich is the son of a 70-year-old Marxist lawyer living 450 miles west of Caracas, but neither father nor son belonged to our party. He told reporters he did not know where Ilyich was now. Book 1, Chapter 1. The trawler plunged into the angry swells of the dark, furious sea, like an awkward animal trying desperately to break out of an impenetrable swamp. The waves rose to Goliathan heights, crashing into the hull with the power of raw tonnage. The white sprays caught in the night sky cascaded downward over the deck under the force of the night wind. Everywhere there were the sounds of inanimate pain, wood straining against wood, ropes twisting, stretched to the breaking point. The animal was dying. 2 abrupt explosions pierced the sounds of the sea and the wind and the vessel's pain. They came from the dimly lit cabin that rose and fell with its host body. A man lunged out of the door, grasping the railing with one hand, holding his stomach with the other. A second man followed, the pursuit cautious, his intent violent. He stood bracing himself in the cabin door. He raised a gun and fired again, and again. The man at the railing whipped both his hands up to his head, arching backward under the impact of the 4th bullet. The trawler's bow dipped suddenly into the valley of 2 giant waves, lifting the wounded man off his feet. He twisted to his left, unable to take his hands away from his head. The boat surged upward, bow and midships more out of the water than in it, sweeping the figure in the doorway back into the cabin. A 5th gunshot fired wildly. The wounded man screamed, his hands now lashing out at anything he could grasp, his eyes blinded by blood and the unceasing spray of the sea. There was nothing he could grab, so he grabbed at nothing. His legs buckled as his body lurched forward. The boat rolled violently leeward, and the man, whose skull was ripped open, plunged over the side into the madness of the darkness below. He felt rushing cold water envelop him, swallowing him, sucking him under, and twisting him in circles, then propelling him up to the surface, only to gasp a single breath of air. A gasp, and he was under again. And there was heat, a strange moist heat at his temple that seared through the freezing water that kept swallowing him, a fire where no fire should burn. There was ice, too, an ice-like throbbing in his stomach and his legs and his chest, oddly warmed by the cold sea around him. He felt these things, acknowledging his own panic as he felt them. He could see his own body turning and twisting, arms and feet working frantically against the pressures of the whirlpool. He could feel, think, see, perceive panic and struggle, yet, strangely, there was peace. It was the calm of the observer, the uninvolved observer, separated from the events, knowing of them but not essentially involved. Then another form of panic spread through him, surging through the heat and the ice and the uninvolved recognition. He could not submit to peace, not yet. It would happen any second now. He was not sure what it was, but it would happen. He had to be there. He kicked furiously, clawing at the heavy walls of water above, his chest burning. He broke surface, thrashing to stay on top of the black swells. Climb up! Climb up! A monstrous rolling wave accommodated. He was on the crest, surrounded by pockets of foam and darkness. Nothing. Turn! Turn! It happened. The explosion was massive. He could hear it through the clashing waters and the wind, the sight and the sound, somehow his doorway to peace. The sky lit up like a fiery diadem, and within that crown of fire, objects of all shapes and sizes were blown through the light into the outer shadows. He had won. Whatever it was, he had won. Suddenly he was plummeting downward again, into an abyss again. He could feel the rushing waters crash over his shoulders, cooling the white-hot heat at his temple, warming the ice-cold incisions in his stomach and his legs, and his chest. His chest was in agony. He had been struck, the blow crushing, the impact sudden and intolerable. It happened again. Let me alone, give me peace. And again. And he clawed again and kicked again, until he felt it. A thick, oily object that moved only with the movements of the sea. He could not tell what it was, but it was there, and he could feel it, hold it. Hold it. It will ride you to peace, to the silence of darkness, and peace. The rays of the early sun broke through the mists of the eastern sky, lending glitter to the calm waters of the Mediterranean. The skipper of the small fishing boat, his eyes bloodshot, his hands marked with rope burns, sat on the stern gunwale smoking a Gauloise, grateful for the sight of the smooth sea. He glanced over at the open wheelhouse. His younger brother was easing the throttle forward to make better time, the single other crewman checking a net several feet away. They were laughing at something, and that was good. There had been nothing to laugh about last night. Where had the storm come from? The weather reports from Marseille had indicated nothing. If they had, he would have stayed in the shelter of the coastline. He wanted to reach the fishing grounds 80 kilometers south of La Seine-sur-Mer by daybreak, but not at the expense of costly repairs. And what repairs were not costly these days? Or at the expense of his life, and there were moments last night when that was a distinct consideration. "Tu es fatigué, hein, mon frère?" his brother shouted, grinning at him. "Va te coucher maintenant, laisse-moi faire." "D'accord," the brother answered, throwing his cigarette over the side and sliding down to the deck on top of a net. "A little sleep won't hurt." It was good to have a brother at the wheel. A member of the family should always be the pilot on a family boat. The eyes were sharper. Even a brother who spoke with the smooth tongue of a literate man, as opposed to his own coarse words. Crazy. 1 year at the university, and his brother wished to start a compagnie. With a single boat that had seen better days many years ago. Crazy. What good did his books do last night, when his compagnie was about to capsize? He closed his eyes, letting his hands soak in the rolling water on the deck. The salt of the sea would be good for the rope burns. Burns received while lashing equipment that did not care to stay put in the storm. "Look, over there." It was his brother. Apparently, sleep was to be denied by sharp family eyes. "What is it?" he yelled. "Port bow, there's a man in the water. He's holding on to something, a piece of debris, a plank of some sort." The skipper took the wheel, angling the boat to the right of the figure in the water, cutting the engines to reduce the wake. The man looked as though the slightest motion would send him sliding off the fragment of wood he clung to. His hands were white, gripped around the edge like claws, but the rest of his body was limp as a man fully drowned passed from this world. "Loop the ropes," yelled the skipper to his brother and the crewman. "Submerge them around his legs. Easy now. Move them up to his waist. Pull gently. His hands won't let go of the plank. Reach down, pry them up. It may be the death lock. No, he's alive, but barely, I think. His lips move, but there's no sound. His eyes also, though I doubt he sees us. The hands are free. Lift him up, grab his shoulders, and pull him over. Easy now." "Mother of God, look at his head," yelled the crewman. "It's split open." "He must have crashed it against the plank in the storm," said the brother. "No," disagreed the skipper, staring at the wound. "It's a clean slice, razor-like, caused by a bullet. He was shot." "You can't be sure of that." "In more than one place," added the skipper, his eyes roving over the body. "We'll head for Ile de Port Noir. It's the nearest island. There's a doctor on the waterfront." "The Englishman?" "He practices." "When he can," said the skipper's brother. "When the wine lets him. He has more success with his patients' animals than with his patients." "It won't matter. This will be a corpse by the time we get there. If by chance he lives, I'll bill him for the extra petrol and whatever catch we miss. Get the kit. We'll bind his head for all the good it will do." "Look," cried the crewman, "look at his eyes." "What about them?" asked the brother. "A moment ago they were gray as steel cables. Now they're blue." "The sun's brighter," said the skipper, shrugging. "Or it's playing tricks with your own eyes. No matter, there's no color in the grave." Intermittent whistles of fishing boats clashed with the incessant screeching of the gulls. Together they formed the universal sounds of the waterfront. It was late afternoon, the sun a fireball in the west, the air still and too damp, too hot. Above the piers and facing the harbor was a cobblestone street and several blemished white houses, separated by overgrown grass shooting up from dried earth and sand. What remained of the verandas were patched lattice-work and crumbling stucco supported by hastily implanted pilings. The residences had seen better days a number of decades ago, when the residents mistakenly believed Ile de Port Noir might become another Mediterranean playground. It never did. All the houses had paths to the street, but the last house in the row had a path obviously more trampled than the others. It belonged to an Englishman who had come to Port Noir 8 years before under circumstances no one understood or cared to. He was a doctor, and the waterfront had need of a doctor. Hooks, needles, and knives were at once means of livelihood as well as instruments of incapacitation. If one saw le docteur on a good day, the sutures were not too bad. On the other hand, if the stench of wine or whiskey was too pronounced, one took one's chances. Tant pis. He was better than no one. But not today. No one used the path today. It was Sunday, and it was common knowledge that on any Saturday night the doctor was roaring drunk in the village, ending the evening with whatever whore was available. Of course, it was also granted that during the past few Saturdays the doctor's routine had altered. He had not been seen in the village. But nothing ever changed that much. Bottles of scotch were sent to the doctor on a regular basis. He was simply staying in his house. He had been doing so since the fishing boat from La Ciotat had brought in the unknown man who was more corpse than man. Dr. Geoffrey Washburn awoke with a start, his chin settled into his collarbone, causing the odor of his mouth to invade his nostrils. It was not pleasant. He blinked, orienting himself, and glanced at the open bedroom door. Had his nap been interrupted by another incoherent monologue from his patient? No, there was no sound. Even the gulls outside were mercifully quiet. It was Ile de Port Noir's holy day, no boats coming in to taunt the birds with their catches. Washburn looked at the empty glass and the half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table beside his chair. It was an improvement. On a normal Sunday, both would be empty by now, the pain of the previous night having been spiraled out by the Scotch. He smiled to himself, once again blessing an older sister in Coventry who made the Scotch possible with her monthly stipend. She was a good girl, Bess was, and God knew she could afford a hell of a lot more than she sent him, but he was grateful she did what she did. And one day she would stop, the money would stop, and then the oblivions would be achieved with the cheapest wine until there was no pain at all, ever. He had come to accept that eventuality, until 3 weeks and 5 days ago, when the half-dead stranger had been dragged from the sea and brought to his door by fishermen who did not care to identify themselves. Their errand was one of mercy, not involvement. God would understand. The man had been shot. What the fisherman had not known was that far more than bullets had invaded the man's body and mind. The doctor pushed his gaunt frame out of the chair and walked unsteadily to the window overlooking the harbor. He lowered the blind, closing his eyes to block out the sun, then squinted between the slats to observe the activity in the street below, specifically the reason for the clatter. It was a horse-drawn cart, a fisherman's family out for a Sunday drive. Where the hell else could one see such a sight? And then he remembered the carriages and the finely groomed geldings that threaded through London's Regent Park with tourists during the summer months. He laughed out loud at the comparison. But his laughter was short-lived, replaced by something unthinkable 3 weeks ago. He had given up all hope of seeing England again. It was possible that might be changed now. The stranger could change it. Unless his prognosis was wrong, it would happen any day, any hour or minute. The wounds to the legs, stomach, and chest were deep and severe, quite possibly fatal were it not for the fact the bullets had remained where they had lodged, self-cauterized, and continuously cleansed by the sea. Extracting them was nowhere near as dangerous as it might have been, the tissue primed, softened, sterilized, ready for an immediate knife. The cranial wound was the real problem. Not only was the penetration subcutaneous, but it appeared to have bruised the thalamus and hippocampus fibrous regions. Had the bullet entered millimeters away on either side, the vital functions would have ceased. They had not been impeded, and Washburn had made a decision. He went dry for 36 hours, eating as much starch and drinking as much water as was humanly possible. Then he performed the most delicate piece of work he had attempted since his dismissal from Maclean's Hospital in London. Millimeter by agonizing millimeter, he had brush-washed the fibrous areas, then stretched and sutured the skin over the cranial wound, knowing that the slightest error with brush, needle, or clamp would cause the patient's death. He had not wanted this unknown patient to die for any number of reasons, but especially one. When it was over and the vital signs had remained constant, Dr. Geoffrey Washburn went back to his chemical and psychological appendage, his bottle. He had gotten drunk, and he had remained drunk, but he had not gone over the edge. He knew exactly where he was and what he was doing at all times. Definitely an improvement. Any day now, any hour perhaps, the stranger would focus his eyes and intelligible words would emerge from his lips. Even any moment. The words came first. They floated in the air as the early morning breeze off the sea cooled the room. "Who's there? Who's in this room?" Washburn sat up in the cot, moved his legs quietly over the side, and rose slowly to his feet. It was important to make no jarring note, no sudden noise or physical movement that might frighten the patient into a psychological regression. The next few minutes would be as delicate as the surgical procedures he had performed. The doctor in him was prepared for the moment. "A friend," he said softly. "Friend? You speak English. I thought you would. American or Canadian is what I suspected. Your dental work didn't come from the UK or Paris. How do you feel?" "I'm not sure. It will take a while. Do you need to relieve your bowels?" "What?" "Take a crapper, old man. That's what the pan's for beside you. The white one on your left. When we make it in time, of course." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Perfectly normal function. I'm a doctor, your doctor. My name is Geoffrey Washburn. What's yours? What? I asked you what your name was. The stranger moved his head and stared at the white wall streaked with shafts of morning light. Then he turned back, his blue eyes leveled at the doctor. I don't know. Oh, my God. I've told you over and over again, it will take time. The more you fight it, the more you crucify yourself, the worse it will be. You're drunk. Generally, it's not pertinent, but I can give you clues if you'll listen. I've listened. No, you don't. You turn away. You lie in your cocoon and pull the cover over your mind. Hear me again. I'm listening. In your coma, your prolonged coma, you spoke in 3 different languages, English, French, and some goddamn twangy thing I presume is Oriental. That means you're multilingual. You're at home in various parts of the world. Think geographically. What's most comfortable for you? Obviously, English. We've agreed to that. So what's most uncomfortable? I don't know. Your eyes are round, not sloped. I'd say obviously the Oriental. Obviously. Then why do you speak it? Now think in terms of association. I've written down words. Listen to them. I'll say them phonetically. Ma, qua, tam quan, ki, sa. Say the first thing that comes to mind. Nothing. Good show. What the hell do you want? Something, anything. You're drunk. We've agreed to that consistently. I also saved your bloody life. Drunk or not, I am a doctor. I was once a very good one. What happened? The patient questions the doctor? Why not? Washburn paused, looking out the window at the waterfront. I was drunk, he said. They said I killed 2 patients on the operating table because I was drunk. I could have gotten away with 1, not 2. They see a pattern very quickly, God bless them. Don't ever give a man like me a knife and cloak it in respectability. Was it necessary? Was what necessary? The bottle. Yes, damn you, said Washburn softly, turning from the window. It was, and it is. And the patient is not permitted to make judgments where the physician is concerned. Sorry. You also have an annoying habit of apologizing. It's an overworked protestation and not at all natural. I don't for a minute believe you're an apologetic person. Then you know something I don't know. About you, yes, a great deal. And very little of it makes sense. The man sat forward in the chair. His open shirt fell away from his taut frame, exposing the bandages on his chest and stomach. He folded his hands in front of him, the veins in his slender, muscular arms pronounced. Other than the things we've talked about? Yes. Things I said while in coma? No, not really. We've discussed most of that gibberish. The languages, your knowledge of geography, cities I've never or barely heard of, your obsession for avoiding the use of names you want to say but won't, your propensity for confrontation, attack, recoil, hide, run, all rather violent, I might add. I frequently strapped your arms down to protect the wounds. But we've covered all that. There are other things. What do you mean? What are they? Why haven't you told me? Because they're physical. The outer shell, as it were. I wasn't sure you were ready to hear. I'm not sure now. The man leaned back in the chair, dark eyebrows below the dark brown hair joined in irritation. Now it's the physician's judgment that isn't called for. I'm ready. What are you talking about? Shall we begin with that rather acceptable-looking head of yours? The face in particular. What about it? It's not the one you were born with. What do you mean? Under a thick glass, surgery always leaves its mark. You've been altered, old man. Altered? You have a pronounced chin. I dare say there was a cleft in it. It's been removed. Your upper left cheekbone, your cheekbones are also pronounced, conceivably Slavic generations ago, as minute traces of a surgical scar. I would venture to say a mole was eliminated. Your nose is an English nose, at one time slightly more prominent than it is now. It was thinned ever so subtly. Your very sharp features have been softened, the character submerged. Do you understand what I'm saying? No. You're a reasonably attractive man, but your face is more distinguished by the category it falls into than by the face itself. Category? Yes, you're the prototype of the white Anglo-Saxon people see every day on the better cricket field, or the tennis court, or the bar at Mirabelle's. Those faces become almost indistinguishable from one another, don't they? The features properly in place, the teeth straight, the ears flat against the head, nothing out of balance, everything in position, and just a little bit soft. Soft? Well, spoiled is perhaps a better word. Definitely self-assured, even arrogant, used to having your own way. I'm still not sure what you're trying to say. Try this, then. Change the color of your hair, you change the face. Yes, there are traces of discoloration, brittleness, dye. Wear glasses and a mustache, you're a different man. I'd guess you were in your middle to late 30s, but you could be 10 years older or 5 years younger. Washburn paused, watching the man's reactions, as if wondering whether or not to proceed. And speaking of glasses, do you remember those exercises, the tests we ran a week ago? Of course. Your eyesight's perfectly normal. You have no need of glasses. I didn't think I did. Then why is there evidence of prolonged use of contact lenses about your retinas and lids? I don't know. It doesn't make sense. May I suggest a possible explanation? I'd like to hear it. You may not. The doctor returned to the window and peered absently outside. Certain types of contact lenses are designed to change the color of the eyes, and certain types of eyes lend themselves more readily than others to the device. Usually those that have a gray or bluish hue. Yours are a cross. Hazel gray in one light, blue in another. Nature favored you in this regard. No altering was either possible or required. Required for what? For changing your appearance. Very professionally, I'd say. Visas, passport, driver's licenses, switched at will. Hair brown, blonde, auburn. Eyes, can't tamper with the eyes. Green, gray, blue. The possibilities are far-ranging, wouldn't you say? All within that recognizable category in which the faces are blurred with repetition. The man got out of the chair with difficulty, pushing himself up with his arms, holding his breath as he rose. It's also possible that you're reaching. You could be way out of line. The traces are there, the markings. That's evidence. Interpreted by you with a heavy dose of cynicism thrown in. Suppose I had an accident and was patched up. That would explain the surgery. Not the kind you had. Dyed hair and the removal of clefts and moles aren't part of a restoration process. You don't know that, said the unknown man angrily. There are different kinds of accidents, different procedures. You weren't there, you can't be certain. Good. Get furious with me. You don't do it half often enough. And while you're mad, think. What were you? What are you? A salesman, an executive with an international company specializing in the Far East. That could be it. Or a teacher. Of languages in a university somewhere. That's possible, too. Fine, choose one, now. I can't. The man's eyes were on the edge of helplessness. Because you don't believe either one. The man shook his head. No. Do you? No, said Washburn. For a specific reason. Those occupations are relatively sedentary, and you have the body of a man who's been subjected to physical stress. Oh, I don't mean a trained athlete or anything like that. You're no jock, as they say. But your muscle tone's firm, your arms and hands used to strain and quite strong. Under other circumstances, I might judge you to be a laborer accustomed to carrying heavy objects, or a fisherman conditioned by hauling in nets all day long. But your range of knowledge, I dare say your intellect, rules out such things. Why do I get the idea that you're leading up to something else? Because we've worked together closely and under pressure for several weeks now. You spot a pattern. I'm right, then? Yes. I had to see how you'd accept what I've just told you. The previous surgery, the hair, the contact lenses. Did I pass? With infuriating equilibrium. It's time now. There's no point in putting it off any longer. Frankly, I haven't the patience. Come with me. Washburn preceded the man through the living room to the door in the rear wall that led to the dispensary. Inside, he went to the corner and picked up an antiquated projector, the shell of its thick, round lens rusted and cracked. I had this brought in with the supplies from Marseille, he said, placing it on the small desk and inserting the plug into the wall socket. It's hardly the best equipment, but it serves the purpose. Pull the blinds, will you? The man with no name or memory went to the window and lowered the blind. The room was dark. Washburn snapped on the projector's light. A bright square appeared on the white wall. He then inserted a small piece of celluloid behind the lens. The square was abruptly filled with magnified letters. Gemeinschaft Bank, Bahnhofstrasse, Zurich, 0717-12-0, 1426-0. What is it? Asked the nameless man. Look at it. Study it. Think. It's a bank account of some kind. Exactly. The printed letterhead and address is the bank. The handwritten numbers take the place of a name, but insofar as they are written out, they constitute the signature of the account holder. Standard procedure. Where did you get it? From you. This is a very small negative. My guess would be half the size of a 35mm film. It was implanted, surgically implanted, beneath the skin above your right hip. The numbers are in your handwriting. It's your signature. With it you can open a vault in Zurich. Chapter 2. They chose the name Jean-Pierre. It neither startled nor offended anyone, a name as common to Port-Noir as any other. And books came from Marseille, 6 of them in varying sizes and thicknesses, 4 in English, 2 in French. They were medical texts, volumes that dealt with injuries to the head and mind. There were cross-sections of the brain, hundreds of unfamiliar words to absorb and try to understand. Lobus occipitalis and temporalis, the cortex, and the connecting fibers of the corpus callosum. The limbic system, specifically the hippocampus and mammillary bodies that together with the fornix were indispensable to memory and recall. Damaged, there was amnesia. There were psychological studies of emotional stress that produced stagnant hysteria and mental aphasia, conditions which also resulted in partial or total loss of memory. Amnesia. There are no rules, said the dark-haired man, rubbing his eyes in the inadequate light of the table lamp. It's a geometric puzzle. It can happen in any combination of ways, physically or psychologically, or a little of both. It can be permanent or temporary, all or part. No rules. Agreed, said Washburn, sipping his whiskey in a chair across the room. But I think we're getting closer to what happened. What I think happened. Which was? Asked the man apprehensively. You just said it, a little of both, although the word little should be changed to massive. Massive shocks. Massive shocks to what? The physical and the psychological. They were related, interwoven, 2 strands of experience, or stimuli, that became knotted. How much sauce have you had? Less than you think. It's irrelevant. The doctor picked up a clipboard filled with pages. This is your history, your new history, begun the day you were brought here. Let me summarize. The physical wounds tell us that the situation in which you found yourself was packed with psychological stress, the subsequent hysteria brought on by at least 9 hours in the water, which served to solidify the psychological damage. The darkness, the violent movement, the lungs barely getting air. These were the instruments of hysteria. Everything that preceded it, the hysteria, had to be erased so you could cope, survive. Are you with me? I think so. The head was protecting itself. Not the head, the mind. Make the distinction, it's important. We'll get back to the head, but we'll give it a label. The brain. All right, mind, not head, which is really the brain. Good. Washburn flipped his thumb through the pages on the clipboard. These are filled with several hundred observations. There are the normal medicinal inserts, dosage, time, reaction, that sort of thing, but in the main they deal with you, the man himself. The words you use, the words you react to, the phrases you employ, when I can write them down, both rationally and when you talk in your sleep and when you were in coma. Even the way you walk, the way you talk or tense your body when startled or seeing something that interests you. You appear to be a mass of contradictions. There's a subsurface violence almost always in control, but very much alive. There's also a pensiveness that seems painful for you, yet you rarely give vent to the anger that pain must provoke. You're provoking it now, interrupted the man. We've gone over the words and the phrases time and time again. And we'll continue to do so, broke in Washburn, as long as there's progress. I wasn't aware any progress had been made. Not in terms of an identity or an occupation, but we are finding out what's most comfortable for you, what you deal with best. It's a little frightening. In what way? Let me give you an example. The doctor put the clipboard down and got out of the chair. He walked to a primitive cupboard against the wall, opened a drawer, and took out a large automatic handgun. The man with no memory tensed in his chair. Washburn was aware of the reaction. I've never used this, not sure I'd know how to, but I do live on the waterfront. He smiled, then suddenly, without warning, threw it to the man. The weapon was caught in mid-air, the catch clean, swift, and confident. Break it down. I believe that's the phrase. What? Break it down. Now. The man looked at the gun. And then, in silence, his hands and fingers moved expertly over the weapon. In less than 30 seconds, it was completely dismantled. He looked up at the doctor. See what I mean? Said Washburn. Among your skills is an extraordinary knowledge of firearms. Army? Asked the man, his voice intense, once more apprehensive. Extremely unlikely, replied the doctor. When you first came out of coma, I mentioned your dental work. I assure you it's not military. And, of course, the surgery, I'd say, would totally rule out any military association. Then what? Let's not dwell on it now. Let's go back to what happened. We were dealing with the mind, remember? The psychological stress, the hysteria. Not the physical brain, but the mental pressures. Am I being clear?